What's up, YouTube? Coming at you with another live recording. So first off, big credit to Hummingbird on the Metacord, the modern Metacord, for like 98.5% of this deck list. It's one that they've been playing in a few leagues and like posting results here and there. And I thought I would like give it a try. I changed out a couple cards and I'm going to talk about that and like why. But we'll start by like going over this list and seeing what's different than kind of what I've been running. So as you can tell, this is a Psychic Frogue Murktide list as opposed to where I've been like really going heavy on Tamiyo and Nethergoyf. This is not that. So if you're looking for Psychic Frogue Murktide, you came to the right place. If you're looking for Tamiyo, probably not going to find it in this one. But regardless, this is a little more like blue-black control with the shadow side, where my list is kind of like blue-black tempo-ish. So we'll just go left to right, or on your side, left to right. I got to do this backwards on recording. And we'll go through some of the columns here, talk about what differentiates the deck. So as you can first see in the first column, the 19 mana sources includes 3 copies of Sink into Stupor. So Hummingbird's list actually had the full 4 Sink into Stupor, which is pretty interesting. I ended up swapping the 4th for an actual land. They were running 19 mana sources as well, but I swapped the 4th Sink into Stupor for an Undercity Sewers. Just because I really like Undercity Sewers, especially in a list like this that's not as heavy on 1-drops. Or like 1-drops that you need to play out to the battlefield, like Nethergoyf and Tamiyo. So, 19 mana sources, 3 copies of the MDFC, Sink into Stupor from MH3. In the actual draw spells, 4 copies to consider for Preordain. I'm running like Baubles and Wraiths, again for Tamiyo, for Nethergoyf. But when you don't have Tamiyo and Nethergoyf and the bulk of your threat package is carried by like Murktide Regent, then having instants and sorceries that you can exile to Murktide is a really, really big deal. Or instants and sorceries that you can discard late to Frog and then exile to either hop your Frog, make your Murktide bigger, whatever the case may be. In the counterspell package, 4 actual counterspell, 4 Drown in the Loch, 3 Stubborn Denial, all the same as their list, and then a Force Negation. I've been super impressed with Force Negation, so I really wanted to find room for one. So the 4th Murktide Regent became the first copy of Force Negation for me. In the threats, 3 Murktide, 4 Frog, 4 Shadow. In their list, they're running 4-4-4. I cut the 4th Murktide because I do understand that you can pitch it to Frog if you draw extra, but you also might run into situations where you just don't see a Frog. And so if you have multiple Murktides in those situations, it looks a lot worse. So I'm going to try just swapping away from that 4th, going to the Force Negation. And then finally, our interactive suite. So they were running 4 Thoughtseize, 2 Inquisition. I swapped the 2nd Inquisition for a Blood Chief's Thirst because I have been seeing so much Boros energy, it's not even funny. So having an extra piece of spot removal is a pretty big deal in that matchup. And then the 4 Fatal Push to round out the removal. In the sideboard, the 4 Consigned to Memory, 2 Stern Scolding, 3 Harbinger of the Seas, 3 Toxic Deluge, all straight from their list. The Force Negation, I added over the 3rd piece of Grave Hate. They had a Nihil Spellbomb, swapped that to a Force Negation. And they had 2 Unlicensed Hearses, where I've got 2 Soul Guide Lanterns. That could end up mattering, but we'll see how it goes. I'm not like too big on Unlicensed Hearse. Not that it's bad or anything, just not a big fan of the card, especially in a deck like this that doesn't ever want to be crewing it, because just attacking with your actual threats is probably going to be better 9 times out of 10. So that's the list. We'll go ahead and hop into the league. Again, this is all being recorded live, so if it looks absolutely horrible, that's why. But we'll have the description down below with the deck list, with our credit thrown to Hummingbird. We'll have link to the Discord in case you want to come chat, all things Shadow related. I'll link the Metacord as well, since that's where I got the list. So if you want to ask Hummingbird questions directly, you can. And then I'll have link to my Twitch and Twitter in case you want to catch a live stream if we decide to stream this deck live in the future. So let's go ahead and find our first opponent. See what we got, what we run into. Some of the advantages of a list like this over what I run. Bigger threats means you're less susceptible to something like Galvanic Discharge, Murktide flying over against Yawgmoth and Nadu, and Boros energy and stuff like that can be a really big deal. Just naturally having flying instead of Frog having to exile stuff to give itself flying. So we're on the draw. We have a Sink into Stupor, as well as a Force Negation. So I think I'm going to keep this. If I have to force, I will. Otherwise, I've got some cheap draw spells to try to find some more lands. It is kind of cool seeing a hand with just 7 spells and being like, oh yeah, I can keep this. All right, let's force that. Get rid of the Consider because ultimately the Preordain's probably the better draw spell. Now hitting a swamp here is pretty nice. I think I'm going to go for the Thoughtseize instead of... Yes, they did have another Aether Vial, which we will go ahead and take. So good choice on the Thoughtseize. I do find another land for a Stoneforge. It looks like it's just some sort of mono-white taxes deck. They're getting a Lion Sash. Alright, so we'll Blood Chief's Thirst the Stoneforge. And go ahead and preordain, try to find ourselves a threat. Bottom. Lion Sash is online, but they don't currently have a third land. Frog's a good pickup. Am I just playing the Frog? So Recruiter is a 1/1. I think I'm going to go ahead and... No, I don't really need to... I don't really need to kill the Lion Sash just yet. I can, like, exile stuff to the Frog. And if they find land and play Recruiter, then they're not doing anything with the Sash anyway. They want to eat their own stuff, that's fine. If this is the case, I think I'm just going to go to my turn, attack, and draw a card. Okay. So they found a Solitude. I could Sink into Stupor to try to get them to ditch another card. That seems a little aggressive. Their 2 blind draws were Sync, Ephemerate. Or Solitude Ephemerate. Sorry. And I think I'm just going to go ahead and kill this Lion Sash now. That way if I top deck a Murktide, it looks better. Play out a 1/1 Shadow. Don't have to commit to Sink into Stupor just yet. It's like I'd rather keep that in hand if I find another land, but can't like not attack. But they're just a recruiter away from another Solitude. Alright, Preordain's really good. Stub is not. I don't really want a Misty Rainforest. Alright, that's good. The reason I don't want a Misty Rainforest is I'm assuming that my opponent's got another white card in hand. They're not playing lands. They're what looks like a mono white deck. So I'm really assuming that when they find a third land like this, they're going to have Recruiter. Which they do. And if I didn't have Counterspell, they'd be able to just find a Solitude off this Recruiter. And so they'd have the Shadow gone regardless of how big it is. So I would rather focus on finding another threat. Or third Recruiter and another Solitude. Okay. Alright. So like a Murktide. Oh. Pass to their turn with the Bloodstained Mire so we can fetch up a Undercity Sewers. Keep a card on top with their back street. Back street's back, alright. I mean, like, it's a threat. Nah, I think I can do better. Just need like a Murktide. I'll keep a Drown because they kept something on top, so I'd like to be able to interact with that. Could be like another Solitude. And then pretty much just playing out this fetch so I can go ahead and fetch and chalk in case now I do find a Shadow. Got a little more life loss. And I get Revolt for push if I need it. Alright. Hold up, sink into stupor. White Orchid Phantom is okay. And they're not going to go to equip. So I'm guessing that means they've got an Ephemerate. Do have the Ephemerate. Alright. Let's take that. Say go. Pretty good hand. I'm a little surprised that they've been like drawing live stuff and not casting things. It's just like, oh, I've got a Recruiter of the Guard, but I'm not casting a Recruiter of the Guard. I mean, if this is just get a... If this would just get like a Batter Skull, it's kind of fine. But I really don't know what they're getting here. That worries me. Alright. Still need another threat. So we're halfway through the deck. We've seen one Frog, two Shadows, no Murktide. So I make all my comments about like, oh, I'm going to cut a Murktide and get heavily punished for that. Been a Plains. Murktide. Not a Murktide. All right. What do I think this is for 3 mana? We refuse to go down. Never give up, never surrender. It's probably like a Skyclave apparition. And they were considering just like playing it out naked. Alright. We are 1 short of lethal. So if we find like a fetch land, we can fetch Shock, Watery Grave. Alright. Had the call on the Skyclave apparition. Alright, so on our upkeep, we're going to fetch and shock. Attacking with Shadow. Say go. Hope to maybe sink into Stupor. This is a Solitude. Cauldra. So I can just cast this on the Cauldra. Ice. Okay. We are down like 5 minutes on clock, which is kind of surprising. I feel like we weren't really dragging there. We got Deluges coming in. We've got Stern Scoldings coming in. Maybe consider Consigned to Memory. Because they do have a lot of triggered abilities with like Stoneforge Mystic, Solitude, Skyclave Apparition, Recruiter of the Guard. So honestly, Consign's probably a good choice if I can find enough to cut. They never saw Murktide Regent, so I don't know if they're going to have Rest in Peace. Like board out some counter spells. Yeah, it's kind of going to be a toss up as to what kind of hate they're bringing in. If they have Rest in Peace, which I assume they have somewhere in the 75, and they bring a bunch of those in, then there's a really good chance a lot of my hand is just, or a lot of my deck is just going to be dead, and I'm going to have to readjust for game 3. Or in a case like this, they don't have the turn 1 Aether Vial. Well, that makes a big difference. Now, they do have a Sanctifier on Vec, and they do have a Rest in Peace. So, we'll take the one that has legs. Do I want to take the one that has legs? Because I do have Deluge in my deck. Yeah. Let's just take the Rest in Peace. I've got Deluge, which would be a really good answer to a Sanctifier. I've got like 3 copies of it, so Murktide's a pretty good draw. Roll into a counter spell. Say go. Got a Backstreet. So I think I would rather consider than go for the Scry or the Surveil land. Keep a Shadow. That way I can have a Shadow and maybe like hold up Counterspell. Fight over Solitude. So maybe I do something like Counterspell the Recruiter, try to bait the Solitude, and then have Murktide for it. They're just not gonna go. So we'll go Murktide to the bottom, Stern Scolding to the top. Pass the turn. Now we can interact with Solitude. Should we so choose. I'll take a Consign. That's another way to interact with a Solitude. We'll play out our 8/8 Murktide Regent. Say go. Solitude, exile, Solitude. What you got? Now, I don't believe... I think Murktide only triggers when stuff goes from... Yeah, only when it leaves the graveyard. So only when it's in the graveyard and goes to exile from there. So it's not like I can't Fatal Push something, have the Fatal Push go directly to exile for the Sanctifier and get a counter on the Murktide. Though that would have been kind of cool. Now, if they have another copy of Solitude, that would be pretty nasty. Looks like they do. And they've got the Ephemerate. So I'm going to... What? Let this resolve. Consign the trigger. Hit him for 8. And now, do I have to play out the frog? Yeah. Because they're going to have to exile the Murktide. Or they're just dead to that. Which means they ephemerate on the Solitude. They don't gain any life. No. Finding an answer to the frog is pretty annoying. So, go ahead and evoke. Or go ahead and exile. Second copy of Phantom. So this needs to be... I think this, like, has to be a deluge. I think that's, like, the only way I'm getting out of this. What does that do for me? So I can fight over the Ephemerate. But I guess I can attack. Because I can exile 3 lands, jump the frog, attack in, discard the Watery Grave, fatal push one of the phantoms. So, discard Watery Grave. Fatal push one of these phantoms. Eat the other. I could just go ahead and drown the Solitude. Yeah. Just go ahead and drown that. Say go. I don't care if they ephemerate the Sanctifier. They bend Witch Enchanter off the back street. Fair enough. I was gonna say I don't have any form of actual card advantage in my deck, so I don't have anything that I can draw to that draws me 2 cards so that I could, like, Psychic Frog, ditch everything. Not even gonna let me see what my next card is. But, cool. We definitely saw game 1 that maybe having the 4th Murktide, not a bad idea. But, was it game 1 or game 2? Game 2, I think we, like, bottomed 2 Murktides off Scries. So even with 3, we were, like, seeing more than we wanted to. But Murktide's still pretty decent in the face of Sanctifier. Not so much in the face of Rest in Peace, but... you know, what is. Round number 2, we're on the draw. Opponent's got a Giganta. So I would assume Boros. Let's go ahead and fire off an Inquisition. Opponent's on a mole, so might as well make a mole more. Raptor, Bolt, Prison, Blood Moon. Alright, gonna take the Raptor. I've got Stub for the Prison or the Blood Moon, depends on how the game progresses. Keep something on top, so it's either a 2-drop or it's a 3rd land. Looks like just a 2-drop. Second Raptor into Bone Crusher. Alright, Counterspell's a really good pickup. So, I could go Island Preordain. I could just get my basic Swamp and have that out of the way. think I'm going to go Mire Pass. I can soft stub Blood Moon. I could also, like, Revolt Fatal Push. Take 2 off the Raptor. If they go Blood Moon here, I could just, like, Fetch Shock Counterspell. They're going to go Bone Crusher. Let's get our swamp out of the way. Push the Bone Crusher. Alright. Blood Moon, Lightning Bolt, Static Prison, Unknown. If I play Shadow, they can go for the Bolt. If I counterspell, they got Prison. I think I'm just holding up mana this turn. See what happens. Because them attacking is going to get me down low enough to be out of bolt range, but I do have to be careful if I block and they go like, oh, they're just going to fire bolt in my face. Okay. That's a deal. Force of Negation. That is a pretty good one. So I could play out a 6/6 Murktide. Have Force for the Prison. So 6/6 Murktide, Force for the Prison. If their follow-up is Blood Moon, I've got Shadow plus Stub back up. That's probably alright. Alternatively, I could go Shadow, Stub, Force. Now let's go Shadow, Stub, Force. That way, I've got just like a lethal attack in 2 turns. So, stub this. And it makes Murktide bigger. So, attack with Shadow. I think the only thing... Of course, I'm going to regret saying it just like as soon as I do. I think the only thing that just royally messes me up here is end of turn failure. Because end of turn failure would mean They can attack, blink the Murktide. Well, I guess I have lethal if they do that. Or I've got like preordained to try to find something. But I really hope this unknown card is just like a galvanic discharge. Alright. Basically just delving all the way so they don't know what I have available. And I'll fetch up a tapped... Alright. Fetch up a tapped Undercity Sewers there into turn because I'd still have Force open on their turn if something were to happen. But looks like opponent is fine packing it up going to game 2. Force not so great. Can trim a couple Thoughtseize. I really don't like Psychic Frog in this matchup. I don't think Frog is very good into Galvanic Discharge. It's also a little bit awkward if they have like Discharge or something and you ditch to outgrow it and they just static prison you. But at the same time, I don't really have a lot I can afford to cut. I'm going to have to keep counter spells in for stuff like Flage and some of the 2-for-1s. And I've been on and off of Harbinger in this matchup too. Like, I think Harbinger has decent potential to like lock out Boros, but especially a list like what we're up against now, it's got main deck Blood Moons. They're a lot more likely to fetch out like basic planes or something early so that they can have Blood Moon available. And if they do that, then obviously it makes it a lot worse for me to be trying to hit them with a Harbinger. Blood Moon's really nice when your opponent gets like Surveil Land turn 1, then like Aether Hub turn 2, shock in a Sacred Foundry or something to Flage on turn 3, and you just have a Harbinger. Push, really good pickup. I wish I had a Stern Scolding, but it's not the way the cookie crumbled. Feels like in a Johnny. Kind of surprised they got basic planes for Amped Raptor. Like, you could have gotten red and had the energy left over. But now if you hit something pretty good, it's a little awkward. Alright, let's go ahead and Fatal Push the Felia. In a perfect world, I would just get to like wait for Deluge or something, but I think there's too good of a chance that my opponent could have like an unstable amulet or something and value off Felia. And I kind of want all of my mana available just in case I draw like a counter spell. Play the Bloodstained Mire, so if they go for a Blood Moon, I can get a basic Swamp. At least gives me like some level of protection. Okay. All right. So surprisingly, I kind of want Guide of Souls or Amp Raptor to hit something. Not so much that one, but I guess they'll just take their free energy. You know what? I'm going to keep that. I take some extra damage off of this Amped Raptor, but now I can get basic Swamp and not be just like screwed over to Blood Moon if they happen to have one. I'm really surprised, though, to see them being so conservative with their life total. I don't guess maybe conservative's not the best best word choice there. So if they attack in with a Johnny, we can, or with the cat, we can block and try to like trade off with any red permanent. So I'll take this. Hit him for 7 on the crackback. Keep a deluge. All right. Surprisingly, a lot of outs for us winning here. I say outs. It's not even like out. It's more counterspell anything they have, and then we have a chance of winning off Deluge. Countering this because I need to potentially lose life off of this Misty. How does this look? I've got Deluge on top. If they attack for 2, or let's say they attack for 1 with the Ajani, I go to 5. I Deluge for 1, go to 4, fetch, shock, kill them. If they attack with just the token, I go to 4, Deluge for 2, go to 2, fetch for 1, and Shadows a 10/10 and kill them. If they attack with nothing, I Deluge for 2, fetch, shock, kill them. So yeah, I counterspell this and it should be Should be GG. Should be GG. Regardless of how they attack. Choose to attack with nothing. So we draw our deluge. We're going to deluge for 2. Go to 4. Shadow grows to a 9. Shrinks to a 7. We play our fetch land. Fetch and shock down to 1. And attack in for lethal. With our 10/10 shadow. Nice. Let's reset Moto real quick. I don't know if you could tell during that match, but it was being very, very laggy. So. I'll double check just to make sure it's not my end. It's actually Moto. I know Streamlabs likes to run kind of heavy, but can't do much about that, seeing as how I'm recording a video. All right, so 2-0-4-0. Good start to the league. See what we got for round number 3. I'm glad I mentioned Boros Energy before the start of the league, because when I say I've probably seen Boros in like 50% of my matches recently, I am dead serious. I don't know if people are just saying, oh, Nadu's 100% getting the ban, so I'm going to start practicing like the next best thing, or what the situation is, but it's just been Boros or Mardu Energy like every other match for the last probably 4 or 5 days. Round number 3, what do we got? Pretty disruptive hand. Needs a threat. But I do have Undercity Sewers to try to find something. Flooded Strand. I don't really know what Flooded Strand means. I'm going to take like a middle of the road approach and fetch Shock Inquisition so I can be more conservative with my life total going forward if I need to, but I still have a good chunk of life loss in case I top deck a Shadow. Alright. Take Counterspell. Might be a mirror match. Typically with Dimir, you only care about playing blue fetches. You don't really care which blue fetches. So counterspell this. Oh, master me. Sure. Push, consider. So do I want to go ahead and Undercity, or do I want to just push the Bowmaster? Probably Undercity, because I don't know if they're like a frog deck yet. I assume they're a frog deck, and I probably want to save the push in case they find one. Would really like to find a Murktide. Have another Bowmaster. Show me a Murktide. TBD. So we'll go Thoughtseize. Triple Fatal Push. Deep Analysis. Take a push. Push the Bowmaster. Say go. And if they find land for Deep Analysis, I'm probably countering it. Counter a frog. Really need a Murktide, not a frog. So let's just hold up, force a negation for the Deep Analysis. Nope. Pass back. Pretty decent chance that they're like sitting on a counter spell right now. Hmm. I don't know how much more patient I can be on this frog. I really feel like I don't have much of a choice. Really just feels like they're screaming, I've got like another Bowmaster or something. My hand is just screaming, this better be a Murktide on top of my library. So I think that's about the only chance I have. Yeah, they're definitely just sitting on like Counterspell Drown or something. Okay. Starting to see the reasoning for the 4 Murktide. I mean, I already had a pretty good idea of the reasoning, but still. You kind of think like with 8 1-mana draw spells and the 3 Murktides, that's what 11 out of your 66 cards, or 11 out of your 60 cards that you should be seeing them, or enough to like string together that combination a reasonable amount. Nihil Spellbomb. Okay. Now, top of Frog. Say go. So if they have a frog here, I can like thirst it, play my own frog. Alright, when in doubt, just keep throwing frogs at them until something happens. Yep. What are the odds that our opponent would Nihil Spellbomb themselves? I mean, like, probably decent, I would assume. Bowmaster, sure. Especially if it ends up with like them drawing a card. Are they gonna have a Murktide here? This is just another Bowmaster. So if I go Frog to block, they cast a Bowmaster, I go to drown it, they pay. Nah. They don't know I'm a shadow deck yet. At least I don't think. So 4 cards plus a 5th from the spell bomb. Go to our turn. Let's start with Blood Chief's Thirst. Their Bowmaster. Now attack him with Frog. Am I just nuking my yard? I think we're okay with this trade-off. Soul Guide's interesting. Am I just playing out a shadow? Yeah. Shadow, Soul Guide, nuke. I don't know if it really matters. Counterspell. I don't know if they're a Murktide deck. They've got to be a Murktide deck, right? Like Frog, Bowmaster. Alright. Maybe their hand's just like more drown in the locks. On the draw. I'm tempted to just bring in more like Inquisitions, because they're wanting to play a little more of the control role. Like maybe bring in some Inquisitions over some Drowns, maybe a Harbinger over like the last Drown, and just go all in on not caring about the graveyard. But usually don't care for that plan. There's really not really any matchups to me that I'm just all in on. I don't want Drown in the lock. Outside of like the Tron matches. I think that's about the only one. Turn 1 Preordain. Top. So I could go for Thoughtseize. Try to inform my decision, but I think I'm just going to go for Preordain as well. Bottom of Murktide. Top another land. No. Bottom of the land. Alright, Frog's not bad. Tap land from them is really good for me, so now I don't have to worry about them having a Frog. Swamp, Thoughtseize. So now they've drawn all of their cards that they found off of their Preordain. They do have a Frog, so let's take that. Now they got Push, Spell Snare, Unknowns. And alright, Bowmaster is A-okay with me. Yeah. Do I want to just play the Frog and bait the counter spell? Do I want to just kill their Bowmaster? We'll just kill their Bowmaster. And go ahead and consider. I know that I've got the Mire on top that I'm keeping, but that'll give me a card closer to the next thing. Draw for turns in Undercity Sewers, so I've got a really good opportunity to Windmill Slam this Murktide right here. We'll hit their Preordain. Just in case of Snapcaster. 2, 3, 4, 5. Island. Contrary to the mana cost, you cannot spell snare this. Or I should say, contrary to the mana paid for it, you cannot spell snare it. Nice. Fine little 3-0 start. Yep. Seems good. So that game 1 loss was to Bowmaster. That was about it. Can't do a lot about that one. A flash 2-for-1 threat. Pretty good against the blue-black control build of Shadow. But let's get on to round number 4. I know there has been a pretty good uptick in Frog decks, so not shocked to see one. But I do think I've seen more of the Esper Goryo's Vengeance deck as like the Frog deck of choice. I've seen a few blue-black Murktide and stuff like that, but I think mostly I've seen the Esper lists. Hey, in the die roll. Love to see that. One lander, double Murktide, double Frog. Don't love to see that. Opponent reveals Giganta. So my immediate assumption is Boros energy. Could also be Ruby Storm. I think I'm going to throw back. Maybe I'm throwing back Shadow. I'm a ways off of that. This means I can just go for the turn 1 Inquisition. Maybe we high roll and find a land for the Frog. Alright, so it's like Zoo. Take a Kavu. Show me a land, please. Should have specified. Yeah, gotta be in that because I don't want it, unfortunately. I wonder if they're gonna go just like straight cast the Flage. Maybe I should have thought about that Murktide more. Because if they were just going to exile it off the top with a Ragavan, like maybe it wasn't so bad to just give it to them. Found another Kavu or Brawler. So their hand is another Ragavan, a Flage. Pretty good. So they're going to hit me for 7. It's like probably just cast the Flage. Yep. Thankfully, Breeding Pool does not do a very good job of recasting that. I could shock in play Shadow, hold up counter spell. I could play Shadow, tapped land. Oof. Gotta kill the brawler. Do at least have a couple looks at a Murktide. Be pretty nice. White, white, red, red. So they're still off from getting back Flage. Murktide. Nope. Okay. Zoo. Zoo, zoo, zoo. I like Harbinger. Looks a whole lot better if they don't have the Leyline of the Guild Pact. Consign. Consign answers attack trigger off Kavu. Scion of Draco. ETB off like Leyline binding. If they have something like engineered explosives, it answers that. Boros is pretty meh. Don't think I want to board in too many consigns. Drown can be awkward if they have Rest in Peace. I think I want to board out one more of these. I think I wanted to board out one more Stubborn Denial and bring back in a Thoughtseize. Okay. This does have an answer to Scion with Blood Chief's Thirst. It's got some amount of interaction. Kind of want to just bottom here. Yeah, that's fine. Just want to find like fetch lands, counter spells, things like that. See what you got. Kavu and a Rest in Peace. Okay. Take the Kavu. Pass the turn. Attempt to Stubborn Denial of Rest in Peace. If we get so fortunate. Nope. Does not look like we're going to get so fortunate. Okay. So we'll go Misty to the top, draw, drown. Bolt in a sink into stupor. Gonna have to take another chunk of damage here, but so be it. This is pretty good for me. So, push one. Untap. Thirst one. Play a Murktide. Hold up stub, and if they go for rest in peace, we just let it resolve now. We know 2 of their 3 are Windswept Heath, rest in peace. And we just let this resolve. Do we need to let this resolve? If their last card is Leyline Binding, I get punished for countering this. So yeah, just let this resolve. Nuke the yards. Go to my turn. We'll go get a Surveil land on my upkeep. Doing this now instead of on their turn so that I don't have to tap off Stubborn Denial at all. Counterspell is perfect. And let's hit you in the face with the Murktide Regent. Since they played out this breeding pool that we didn't know about, we know one of their 2 cards is a Windswept Heath, and as long as Counterspell, Stubborn Denial can answer the other, we are okay. Alright. So in a situation like this, my opponent's got 2 unknowns and 1 card we know about. If they led on something like a Scion, a Draco, I'd counterspell. If they had 3 unknowns and we didn't know any of them, and I think this is really important. If they had 3 unknowns and we didn't know any of them, and they led on a Scion, a Draco, I would probably just let it resolve, because that Scion just has to chump block anyway. It's the same as if they drew their next card and I still have 2 answers for the 2 blind cards. If they went like Scion and then, I don't know, Scion into like Tribal Flames, I could counter the Tribal Flames. And then they'd still be chump blocking with the Scion. I'd have counterspell for one of their 2 next things. So they'd have to have 2 things that answer Murktide or 2 things that kill me. Alright. I might want to board out like a stub. Or board in a stub for a drown. Because that would give me another turn 1 answer to Rest in Peace. Leyline, sure. Alright. Let's just play Watery Grave, pass. If they go for a Scion, I can consign. If they go for, like, a Kavu or something, I've got Fatal Push. If they go for a Rest in Peace, I can just consider. More lands are fine. Kind of worst case scenario would be I go Undercity Sewers, pass. They cast the Scion and have like a stub backup. I hate this. I hate surveilling with Thoughtseize on the stack because you're just like informing what I may or may not take for no real reason. Like, what are you getting out of surveilling there? Why not wait for me to make my decision on Thoughtseize and then inform your surveilled decision? You know what I mean? Okay. I was gonna say, if they top decked like a Scion right there, I'd be in a lot of trouble. Thankfully, they did not. Get the stub out of hand. Alright. And then this is going to give them like one more blind draw right this turn. And if they whiff, I'm in a really good position. If they hit, then so be it. Get the Kavu out of here. That'll let them start looting away these dead lands. And I kind of want those in hand. I mean, I guess I'm not, like, completely screwed to a Scion because I can play the Frog and hop it. Like, ditch my hand, give it flying. So. It's a Flage. Giganta to hand. Okay. I don't know why they're fetching to do that. I guess in case I top decked a Harbinger. Now, are they going to shock in, play a Giganta? Looks like a Giganta. Alright, good top deck. Take a Brawler. Give the Frog a little boost in the air. So lands, sorcery instant count doesn't really matter. And I think I'm going to discard the Harbinger here. Or just passing. Maybe I'm just playing out another Frog. Just take 5. The coddle's fine. Okay. All cards out in the open. We shall attack in with Frog. No reason to attack in with both. If they want to block, I've got plenty of ammunition to discard. And that is an S tier draw. So now we got Shadow to block the Giganta. We've got the Frog to discard or to block the Wild Nacatl. Counter spell or consign to memory for anything off the top. Kind of had that little perk up in the chair there, like we're doing good. Flage. So I think I just consign the ETB ability of Flage, the damage ability. Yeah. All right. So Flage enters. Going to consign the ETB trigger. For the damage, not for the discard or for the sacrifice. Flage goes away. Oh, crap. I forgot about them being able to get it back right away. Kind of forgot Giganta existed. Okay. Maybe a little more complicated. So I just punted that away, right? Because if I had just let them resolve the first Flage, I could have counterspelled off the Giganta and then had Sink into Stupor to bounce the Wild Nicottle and attack for lethal. So definitely just punted off of that. Now what? If I hop my frogs, no, I sink into Stupor the Wild Nicottle, attack with Frog, Shadow, hop the Frog, one, two, three, four, five, six, seven. Sink into Stupor the Wild Nicottle, hop the Frog, attack in with the 2/3 Frog and the Shadow. And they have to top deck not a fetch land, not a spell that deals me damage. So we go 1, 2, 3. Because this forces the chump block with the Flage. They don't have enough cards in the yard right now to get it back. Yeah, I mean, I hate that I punted away actual lethal. Just guaranteed lethal. By not remembering Giganta tapping for mana. I'm not going to do anything yet. So anything that puts a card in the graveyard kills me. So you're saying there's a chance. Let's swing in with Frog. And I'm just going to play out my other Shadow. Hold the Sink into Stupor. Hold up Counterspell. And I just have lethal with my Frogs next turn. Top deck another Flage. So that's lethal. Nothing I could have done. Punting away lethal. That'll leave a bad taste in your mouth. So close. So close. So, again, if you weren't paying attention, they cast the Flage the first time. I consigned the Flage ETB trigger because I was thinking they would just escape at the next turn. I completely forgot about Giganta making mana. I think I'm just like not used to looking at a gold Giganta and like forgot it has abilities. But they were able to immediately escape it, deal 3 to me. Then I had to force the block. If I just let them have the first trigger and then counterspelled it on the way back, then I would have had untap, Sink into Stupor, the Wild Nicotl, attack for lethal with a Shadow and a Frog. And just didn't. That's frustrating. But I guess on the bright side, like, at least I noticed it right away after I consigned, right after they tapped Giganta for mana. It's like, I'm so not used to Boros putting... It's weird, because, like, I've played Giganta and Shadow plenty. And I'm used to Boros playing it. So, like, I see Giganta all the time. I just never think about it, man, or producing mana. I just think, oh, this is a 5/5. That's all it is. The free 5/5 out of the sideboard. Mishra's Bauble. Nethergoy faction. Okay. Pass. Probably just get a watery or a Undercity Sewers. Ooh, we Grixis. Just like the bench summer shadow list. See what they got. Mm-hmm. Take it. Now are we going to get a little frog on frog action? I would really like to draw a card. But at the same time, if their hand is just like a bunch of red removal spells or something. I'm also really not a fan of like the Goyf, the Nether Goyf, yeah, Nether Goyf Psychic Frog combination. It always looks really awkward to me. Bone shards, sure. Alright. They are down to one card. Well, two cards after Frog. I'm gonna put that on top for the off chance that I get another turn and I can like Murktide plus Frog. So they go down to 9. Take Murktide. Exile with the Frog. They are also a shadow deck. Okay, so I could go removal spell, attack with shadow. I could go frog, pass. But if the shadow forces removal anyway, then I might as well attack with the shadow. And then I guess just play Frog and hope for the best. Two, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So I can hop up with some frogs. Okay. You have to have double threat here. Or Nethergoyf plus removal spell. Two, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So they cannot... They cannot ditch enough cards to prevent this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So yeah, I just need to respond to this. Alright. Keep track of cards in the yard. So I have to respond to this stub. I can't let it resolve because I need to... And I need to destroy the Nethergoyf. If I don't destroy the Nethergoyf, then they get 6 cards in their yard, which is enough for them to exile twice with Psychic Frog and blank the Drown in the Lock. Which, as we know, would have been not good for me. Just saying. I think I am going to bring in Harbinger. Usually not like super sold on Harbinger in red base removal matchups, but we'll try it. You don't want them like floating mana response to the Harbinger. And maybe I don't want 3 Harbingers. That could be excessive. Yep. Can get a Serval land if they don't do anything crazy. We can just get a Watery Grave or something for Consider if they do. I think I'll drop the Preordain. It's kind of an awkward one to drop, but I'm figuring if they have a Bowmaster, which I kind of expect them to be a Bowmaster deck, then I don't really want the Preordain. I could play out Frog. Yeah. I guess I'm okay playing out a Frog. Seeing what they do. Got it. Show me a Bowmaster. No Bowmaster, he says. Okay. Play Misty so that I can get basic island. Fatal Push. I am going to assume that they've got like a stubborn denial or something. And that this isn't just Fatal Push, yeah. But still a 2-for-2 trade. Nope. Here's another frog. Here's Froggy. All right. We'll go for the counter spell. They got another stub. They got another stub. Drown unlocks good top deck. What you got? Detectives Phoenix. Sure. Not a card I was particularly expecting. Seeing as how they got 9 cards in their graveyard and they can't bestow. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 total CMC. That's actually really funny. Alright, Murktide Shadow. Murktide Shadow. Murktide Shadow. Neither a Murktide nor a Shadow. I might just have to counter this on the way back down. Really don't want to, but it's a clock. Like I said, they can't currently bestow it. So maybe it gives me a chance to draw a Shadow or Murktide or a Polluted Delta. Definitely one of these situations where I'm like, you know what would look a lot better than Psychic Frog? A Nethergoyf. That would look exponentially better than a Psychic Frog. Well, that gives them bestow, or enough to bestow if they have a threat. K-Command. K-Command get back the Phoenix is kind of hilarious. Alright, Murktide. It's a pretty bad flood we have going on there. Also, does not feel particularly good to go through half of your deck and not see a single Murktide. I don't think they saw Harbinger. So I'm pretty inclined to leave that one in. Like some number of them. Maybe like keep in a Harbinger, take out second Harbinger for Inquisition or something. But we'll see. I haven't played. I don't think I've played against a Detectives Phoenix deck since MH3 dropped. Interesting. I know it's a card that a lot of people like tried. I don't want to say a lot, and I don't want to say tried. Some people put in their deck in some number. I don't think anybody's gotten any sort of results with it yet, but I could be wrong. Yeah, I just have to ship that back. This is better-ish, kind of. What about counterspell since I don't have double blue right now? Alright, here's a frog. Frog, 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 froggy, frog, frog, frog. Guess I want to turn off auto yields in case they have a, oh, they kept a one-lander. Ooh. You don't say. That's a pretty exciting development for Team Frog. And just play this out. Exciting development indeed for Team Frogue. I think if they don't hit a land here, they probably scoop it up. Oh, never mind. What do I know? I would like to hit with 2 frogs. Exile 1. So if they do have a Murktide, they'll have to fetch to play it. So if they just put a fetch on the yard, like I'm nuking their yard immediately. I think I'm just going to drown this. Attack in and just like nuke their yard, play out Harbinger. Seems fine, right? There goes your yard. Here's a Harbinger. Godspeed. All right. Fun little end there to the league. Glad to see Harbinger getting a little love. Well, I hate to say that we would have had the 5-0 had I not punted away that game against Zoo. Especially because we can, like, absolutely directly point out that we would have had the win. We had lethal. We knew, or didn't know, but we had a line to get lethal, guaranteed. And we just 70-yard bomb punted it away. But that's the beat sometimes. I can't always make all the perfect plays or we'd be on the Pro Tour. What do we think about the list? We did hardcast Sink into Stupor a few times. I don't think there was ever a point where we had Sink and didn't have anything to do with it. So that's always nice. Played it out as land plenty of times. The 1 mana draw spells. If I wasn't running Murktide in this list, or if Hummingbird wasn't running Murktide, then I would absolutely swap over Consider or Preordain to like Wraith. But because you have Murktide and you want those instants and sorceries, it's pretty important. Never had the Frogue Murktide combo, but I did miss the 4th copy of Murktide. I'd probably throw it in over like the Inquisition, because if Boros energy is as popular as it has been, I think I'd rather have 1 less hand disruption spell. Because like they get out on the front foot so quickly that the hand disruption is pretty bad, especially in the mid to late game. So I wouldn't mind dropping that for 4th copy of Murktide. The Frog. I think I'd rather go down some number of Frog. It's like, it's cool like in that very last game when you have double Frog and your opponent doesn't have a removal spell and they're missing lands and you're hitting them for 1 and drawing cards. That's awesome. But normally, like, your graveyard and your hand can't support 2 frogs. So you're hoping that anytime you see 2 frogs, you can just, like, play it out, never have to discard cards to it, and keep drawing stuff. But I don't think that's very realistic. The clock's too slow. Your permission's not good enough. You can discard the second frog to the first frog, but that's assuming discard is relevant. You don't want to discard reactively, like your opponent playing a bolt or something into a frog, and you have to discard because you don't know if they have another way to kill the frog, and you just threw away a bunch of stuff. And you don't really want to be discarding like a threat if you can avoid it, because you are so threat light already. So multiple Psychic Frogs just looks like really, really bad to me, especially compared to multiple like Nethergoyfs. Blood Chief's Thirst. I have liked the Blood Chief's Thirst as an additional spot removal spell in these Dimir lists. Consign to Memory, didn't see any Tron stuff, but we did see Consign against Zoo and directly attributed that to our punt. Stern Scolding's fine, Force fine, Harbinger. We didn't really see like heavy Harbinger matchups, but still did something there at the end. Toxic Deluge is great. Soul Guide. I can see where Hummingbird chose to play Unlicensed Hearse over Soul Guide. I definitely don't think that's a bad decision by any means. Like, gives you enough Grave Hate to keep like Flage off the menu while still allowing you to drown and lock everything else. And I think that's perfectly reasonable. I would just give a big like warning that if you're playing Unlicensed Hearse, I would probably play it with the expectation that you're never going to crew with it. It's always just going to be 2 mana, hit the things you need to hit, and then maybe every once in a blue moon, you're like, oh, I've got a Murktide, the board's empty, play out my Murktide, crew my Hearse, attack in. Maybe. But if you're thinking it's going to be like a constant crew thing or crew fairly often, but yeah, that's about all I got for this one. Thanks so much for coming and hanging out through this league with me. Hopefully we get to do some more straight to YouTube content in the future. Well, I know we'll do some more, so that's always exciting. Otherwise, hope everybody has a fantastic rest of your day. Stay safe, enjoy some good food and company. I will catch y'all back live later. Adios for now.